My money don't jiggle jiggle mid folds. I can see you wiggle wiggle. And sorry, let's just date this podcast real quick. um, hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com. Photo, video, digital media production. Today we're discussing The Ring 2. The Ring 2 is a 2005 American supernatural psychological horror film and the sequel to the 2002 film The Ring, or The Ring, which was a remake of the 1998 Japanese film Ring. Hideo Nakida, Nakata, I think. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Is the director of the original Japanese film Ring, on which the American versions are um, based on. He directed this film in place of Gore Verbinski. Norm Murrow was attached before Nakata, but left due to creative differences. This film was shot in Astoria, Oregon, and Los Angeles, California. It was released on March 18th, 2005. And although it was met by generally negative critical reception, it opened in the United States with a strong 35 million on its first weekend, more than doubling the opening weekend of The Ring, original 2002. Its final 76 million domestic gross was less than the original's 129 million, but it took 87 million internationally for a total gross of 163 million dollars, which I believe the worldwide gross for the original was 250 million. So it's coming in short. Written by Erin Kruger, same guy as the original film, and it is the second installment in the Ring film series, and was followed by Rings 2017. And by the second installment, I mean it's the second installment in the U.S. franchise. So it's bringing back Naomi Watts, Simon. We have Simon Baker, David Dorfman, Elizabeth Perkins, Gary Cole, and I'm going to leave some big names for the spoiler section. Cinematography is Gabriel Bernstein, which is a departure from Craig. Was it? Um, who was the? Geez, let me see. The other was Bahol Perez or something like that. Bohan Bazeli, who works in core collaboration with Gore Verbinski a lot for the other films that they work on, but this time he does not come back for the second one. The second one is the cinematographer is Gabriel Bernstein, notable for working on numerous films, including The Distinguished Gentleman, The Spanish Prisoner, Blade 2, Street Kings, and several entries in the MCU, including let me see if there's any MCU movies I can tell you off the top of my head. Blade 2, SWAT, Blade Trinity, Ring 2, the Black Widow. Okay, so that's where the other. And Agent Carter. I believe that's an MCU short film. Okay, so that is the cinematography for The Ring 2. Let me see what else we need to bring back. New editor, Michael Canoe. Music by Henning Lohner, Martin Tillman, and original themes composed by Hans Zimmer. Made on a budget of $50 million, which the other one was $48 million. So they definitely tried to keep this one on the lower end as well. Let me see what else we have. 110 minutes, which puts this as, what is it, just under 2 hours. But 150 minutes, or sorry, an hour and 50 minutes We still feel like this is a little bit long of a film. I definitely feel like the pacing of this second film does not match the pacing of the first one and the story progression of the first one. So, with saying all that, clearly this movie was not exactly brought together in the same realm as the first one. I thought the first one had a little bit better direction, had the music composed by Hans Zimmer, has the editing of one of the, I think it's Craig Wood was the editor in that one. He works alongside Verbinski a lot. They didn't have those uh formulated gears of individuals together. So it definitely feels like a different type of movie when watching this one. Um, since it's released in 2005 on March 18th, that's 3 years after the first one, the anticipation was probably growing a bit. I'm surprised they couldn't crank this out a little bit faster, to be honest. Maybe there was more CGI that they had to implement in this one. But having it come out on March 18th tells me that they didn't think that it was going to be a big seller in the Halloween spectrum, or maybe they had DreamWorks might have had something else coming out during then. I don't have any knowledge to that, but I think that The Ring probably should have stayed within the September October release schedule to kind of keep that momentum building for, oh, maybe we get these every couple Halloweens or something like that. So, what is going on with the the Ring 2? Is there reasoning to have the Ring 2? Like, uh, what is the whole notion of the Ring 2? It's ironic because I don't see any of the plot on here without going into too many big spoilers. Let me see if I can get this right here. So, 6 months after the incidents of in involving the lethal videotape, new clues prove that there is a new evil lurking in the darkness. And to be honest, without going into spoilers yet, I don't know if there's a new evil or if the original evil was ever quite stomped out, you know? Um, Obviously there's going to be spoilers for the first movie because this is the sequel to that one. Um, but basically they buried the big bad at the end of uh the Ring original, you know? Was the Ring original in 2002 was basically solved by the end of that. 2002 they had this they brought the introduction of Samara, this creepy ass girl that was tortured and basically killed by her parent, her mother. Um, in the first one, is she's laid to rest after she was thrown down a well for several years, and I don't feel like there was any correlation of why this Samara creepy ass character was haunting people through a videotape of images about her life. I guess that was kind of like, I guess that makes sense. The haunting I can get. I can totally get behind. My big bugaboo about the original Ring was that the VHS tape, the haunted VHS tape, felt like a MacGuffin. It felt like a reason to sell the film. But once you got in there, you were really um you're really focused on this, underlying tone of this girl that was basically abused as a young person and thrown down a well, and now she haunts people. Um, I think that we've seen the creepy kid storyline numerous times. I just watched Insidious not too long ago, and I feel like that kind of had that kind of realm of that about it. Um, and of course, this is based off of I think it's a manga of the original Japanese film of 1998. I think it's a manga, but don't, take my word for it. Um, take my word for a grain of salt. I don't have that off the top of my head. Um, But anyways, let's uh let's continue on with a little bit of behind the scenes and just overall thoughts about this movie before we get into spoilers. Overall, I do feel like the pacing is a lot slower. The scares are not as scary. The story focuses so much more on Rachel's son, Aiden, David Dorfman's character, and I think David Dorfman as a child actor does a pretty damn good job at portraying like horrified and scary imagery at the same time. I will say that uh, the way he talks and interacts with his mother, he feels like a grown ass man. It's like, oh my goodness. They kind of feel like they took a page out of the book of the Sixth Sense a little bit with it too, with the whole creepy kid kind of thing. And I'm not gonna spoil that or anything like that. So if you've seen that, you know what I mean. Let me see if there's anything else that we want to talk about this before we hop into spoilers. Like I said, the movie feels like it definitely has. I don't think that the set pieces are as strong in The Ring 2. Um, the characters feel a little bit less tied to each other. Like we had the ex-boyfriend in the first one. We had the cousin in the first one. Like I don't really feel like there's tons of like um characters that really are interwoven into this story that make it nearly as interesting. So when if they are disposed of, do we care about them? And to my to me, I was like, yeah, I didn't really care about that guy anyway. So I was like, oh, fuck them. If they're not part of the main first two on the cast list, then they're probably going to be fine, kind of thing. But not to say that either one of these two come out fine. We don't know that yet. We're not in the spoilers. Um, Let me see anything else. So, with saying all that, yeah, The Ring 2 just elaborates on the story of Samara, understanding her, um, where she came from a little bit more, understanding her terrible abusive background, her original parents, that type of thing. Um, it kind of answers questions to things that I really didn't have, and questions to from the first movie. It doesn't really. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the VHS tape of watching a tape and dying after 7 days doesn't feel like it holds grip over this movie like it did the first one, as like a MacGuffin of to or a gimmick of why you should watch the film. This one just feels like, oh, it's in the film and don't worry about it after you watch if someone watches the tape, don't worry about it. It's like, let's keep it moving. We got to keep it moving. And so, with saying that, I just don't feel like it holds, it doesn't hold it down like the first one. Like the first one has kind of a level of camp to it. There's a level of mystery, and sometimes majority of the time, the mystery was interesting to follow. This, I feel like it does drag in some bits, and they kind of do uh tropey horror things, like the ghost can only be seen in photos and stuff like that. We've seen this throughout the years. And I'm not sure if this is like one of the best uses of it. I feel like sometimes they've done it even better in more recent movies. Um, so there are like scary movie tropes that happen. I don't think there's many jump scares in these two movies as I was expecting. Most of the scares are just like they go for it, like shit happens. Um, but I will say The Ring 2, I feel like it could have been shaved 20 minutes. Um, they needed to just kind of tap into this story. If they were going to continue on with the Rachel Aiden story, I think that there was different ways they should have done it. Um, but this one is way more about the paternal aspects of Samara's family and how that they treated her good, treated her bad, that type of thing. And kind of relating it to how Rachel is as a mother, and they kind of dive in a little bit about her as a mother, kind of like it's almost like a small critique on like being a parent and being a quote unquote being a good mother. It's sometimes a little bit uh less subtle in this movie than it is in the first one. And yeah, with saying all of that, I would probably give it a 5 out of 10. It's just doesn't hit those same beats as the first one does. If this had come first and the first movie came second, I would say that the second movie would have been superior. This is not one of those situations where, it's only be the first time you see it. I just feel like this movie is it's got kind of that extended series syndrome, which in my opinion would be like if these were on Netflix, that these would be the last two episodes that just kind of ended on a fine note. It didn't leave on a high note, but left on a fine note. And again, I've only seen the first two Ring movies, so I watched them within the last like 2 days, and so I'm kind of like got them back to back in my head. So if I kind of jumble the two together a little bit, bear with me. But with saying that, let's hop into the spoilers for this PG-13 hour and a half, hour and 50-minute movie. Um, and yeah, be sure to check out patreon.com/lookitupodcast. You can get this full review in full and reviewed on the patreon.com/lookitupodcast. And you can get this review early. You could be listening to this months, weeks, way, way, way early if you wanted to, through the Patreon and supporting us on there. You'll have the limited cut on the YouTubes and on the SoundClouds for everybody. But yeah, I will say this is about a 5 out of 10. And it's not because I hated it. It's just because more than anything, I found it boring. I found a lot of the scares kind of repetitive. There's only so many times a creepy ass girl with long black hair can come out of a well and crank her neck around looking all crazy and shit like that, and it scared me as the audience. I'm not looking for like torture porn or anything like that. I'm not looking for any of that type of stuff, but I am looking for something, a propelling story that really emphasizes and goes into the ins and outs of the story progression line. Honestly, the way this movie begins, it feels like they're trying to move in a separate direction a little bit, maybe kind of showing like a different story. Um, but maybe they should have done like the aliens type thing. Maybe make it more of an action film. Maybe make it more of uh, a cerebral psychological thriller. I feel like the first one was very much that, but even more so. I almost wanted them to kind of choose a lane a little bit, because it feels like they're just kind of mining at the bit of, oh, we just need more Samara, more creepy images, but we're not going to really emphasize or elaborate on any of the other characters or the world that we're living in. And we're going to kind of make the main character, have kind of ridiculous motivations and not really do the proper thing that a mother should probably do in this situation. But then again, I guess I could go along with the part of critiquing parenthood a bit. Is The Ring 2 basically just a critique on being a parent? I'm not saying it is. I'm just like, it feels like it could be trying that a little bit down that road. So let's hop into the spoiler section. Like I said, the full review is on patreon.com/podcast. You will get an edited review for the YouTubes and everywhere else you are listening to this, SoundClouds or whatever. Be sure to check out LuckyDogPodcast.com for the full library and ways you can support the podcast. Thank you for listening, watching Look It Up Podcast. Let's hop into the rang that rang 2.